I'm Jeff with Precision Replacement Parts. I'm here with Greg today. We're going to be installing a WCRD 566 windshield gasket. Greg, what are we working on?
Today we'll be working on a 1960 Chevy Impala two-door hardtop. Now this gasket will fit the two-door hardtop, the four-door hardtop, and the convertible models over the multiple GM designs.
Now this is quite a lengthy, quite involved install, so take your time, keep track of all the trim pieces that are going to have to come off. We'll do our best to show you how to do all that. Let's get started. All right, Greg, what's the first steps we got to do here?
First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the wiper arms, and then we're going to remove this chrome bezel, and then we're going to open the hood and remove the cowl. To remove the wiper arms, they are spring-loaded and they are on a splined hub. So what we're going to do is we're going to pry up on this side of the hub and push down on this side to release the wiper arm. As you can see, it is spring-loaded. I'm going to use my angled snap ring pliers in place of a spanner tool that they use to remove these locking rings. This is threaded into place. Once that's removed, then this slides out of place. That opens up this area so the cowl can slide off. We'll go do the same thing to the other side. We've opened up the hood and that it exposed the screws that are retaining this cowl. So we're going to go ahead and take those out.
One tech tip that we like to share with you is with this application, there's tons of screws and different fasteners we're going to be having to keep track of. What we like to do is to get a piece of cardboard right where the screws came from, in this case the cowl, and you just take them and you push them into the cardboard. Screw them in here, and that'll keep them all sorted so you can keep track of where they go back when you start putting things back together without falling around and losing them.
Some of the screws that you run into that you're removing, for this instance, it's kind of tightened in there, so we're going to use a handheld impact driver with a Phillips bit, and we're just going to give it a couple taps just to break it loose so we can turn it out. I'll go ahead with the Phillips screwdriver.
We're taking these screws out so then we can get the washer nozzles out.
We have all the screws removed from the cowl. What we're going to do is we're going to slide it forward from underneath this chrome and lift it out. Removing the cowl, now it exposes the clips that hold the lower chrome trim over the windshield seal. We'll get these screws removed and the lower trim removed also. We're going to go along the bottom and remove the screws for the retaining clips. There are some new clips in the kit. Opening the door reveals two more screws that hold into the retainers for the lower trim on the ends. We have all the screws removed. What we're going to do is we're going to lift up and we're going to pull it forward towards the hood of the car, releasing the edges. We'll remove the trim.
Next step is that you need to remove this trim piece right here. It's held on with 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Have all screws removed, so now I can take off this piece right here. Slide it forward. The next piece of trim is this one right here. There's 2 screws we got to deal with. One right here and one right here that someone didn't quite put in correctly. Okay, the screws are removed, so we can go ahead and take this off. Exposes the edge of the glass.
We're on the inside of the vehicle now. We have to remove the interior portion of the trim to remove the last portion of the outside trim. But we're going to start here with the side chrome piece. This screw is missing, so we're going to remove this one and then that one. Now you're going to find that these screws on the inside are of different lengths. So that's where the cardboard comes into play. And it's very important to keep these organized as far as location and length. Okay, so now there's one more screw on the outside here. Of course, that one's very short. This one we have to pull back to release from the edge of the car and wraps around, and then we'll just pull it out. The next piece we want to remove is this one here. There is a screw hole down here. There's nothing holding that end in. This one just pulls straight away from the corner of the vehicle. Now we will proceed by removing the lower section. We've got the screws loosened on our lower interior trim. We are going to remove this speaker grill. Just pulls out of place. This center piece, the screw is removed. That does wrap around both pieces. That does wrap around both of the interior pieces. And then these just lift out of place. Now the next step will be removing the upper and the rear view mirror. We're going to remove the 2 screws on the upper interior trim. One here. Put that in the cardboard in a minute. This one also holds the rear view mirror in place. So we're going to remove this one. We're going to continue to remove the other side. This will be the last screw that holds the mirror on. We'll do that one last. This last screw removes our rear view mirror. Now, we're doing this because this will expose the back side. In these holes here, these studs are from the exterior chrome trim. There's nuts up inside here that we have to remove the outer chrome trim. We pulled back the headliner, gaining access to the retaining pieces for the outer chrome trim. And now what we need to do is, because there is a stud on the back side of the clip, we're going to use a deep well and take off the nuts that are holding that trim on. Remove the fasteners from the inside. Now, this top molding, it is into the sealant, so just carefully pull it up away from the car. And just flip it over when we get it out. Now these are those studs that go through the body of the car, and these are the retainers that are on the inside.
Go ahead and cut away the gasket on the outside here. What this does is exposes the glass. I'll do the whole top and then down the sides here, and I'll be able to get the glass out then.
Jeff's got the outer seal cut away along the top and along the sides. What we're going to do is we're going to just tip this up. Lift it out of the bottom.
Now we're going to go ahead and remove all the old gasket material and clean up the pinch weld real well so we can install a new gasket and glass.
What we'll do is we'll come behind with the scraper edge of the Weatherstrip tool. Just clean up this non-hardening sealant. Get the pinch weld ready for the reinstallation.
All right, Greg, we're going to put the gasket on the windshield here. Where do we start?
This particular gasket has some molded corners. So what I want to do is I want to start in this corner. Get it a couple inches out. Then I'm going to transfer over to this corner and get this one started. Always got to check and make sure that your corners are still on. Otherwise you'll end up shorting that corner and then it won't sit square on the glass. So now that we have all the top installed, I'm going to go down the side. As I'm doing so, I'm going to hold it with my left hand and then feed that gasket back against itself a little bit, especially around this curve. But being careful not to kick this corner off.
And why are you doing that?
We want to make sure that this corner gets seated onto the curve of that glass. And the same reason we want to make sure this corner gets seated so it doesn't pull off. The easiest technique for installing this gasket onto the glass is getting that lower edge on the other side of the glass started and then rolling it up over the edge of the glass. Now that I've got this side seated, I'm going to go over and check the other side.
Now this is a gasket that goes on the glass first, obviously. So you're going to have a little tension in the gasket as you put it on. That's normal. So it's going to look like a little bit short, but you want that tension on it. All right, Greg, we installed this gasket a few days ago. We let it sit here. Why are we doing this?
We put it around the glass so it will relax from the packaging and also take the form of the windshield before installation.
So relax, it helps get all the little wrinkles that may be in the material, kind of reset it, and then just makes it easier to install it into the car.
Correct. It also lets us line up the molded corners to where they need to be to learn the curves of this windshield for easier installation. You could also help it take its form by warming it up using a heat gun, maybe setting it out in the sun. Now we'll proceed with the install.
All right, what are we doing now, Greg?
What we're going to do before we put any rope or any sealant, we're just going to dry fit the glass and the gasket into the car. See how everything kind of fits? Make sure our corners are square where they need to be, because now is the time when you can still move this gasket around. This gives us an idea when we do bring it back with the rope that we can just go ahead and rope it in. Also lets us see where and how much sealant that we have to use.
One thing to note is that when we're dry fitting it, it actually looks like the glass is too small because it's not sunk into the opening all the way. So right over here, I have a gap. It looks like it's too small, but when it gets sucked in, it'll fill up the gap here.
The next step is to install a rope into the gasket. We're going to start at the bottom in the center using a rope insertion tool into the pinch weld groove. As we finish up the bottom, what we're going to do is we're going to go past where we started from, tape the access into place. This way, when we start pulling the rope in, it'll pull this full section in rather than leaving a piece behind. The area of the seal that's going to be contacting the body for sealing purposes has these small fins. So what we're going to be doing is taking a non-hardening sealant and putting a bead of that right on those fins. We're going to do this all the way around the perimeter of the windshield gasket combination. I'll just connect where we started. Now what we're going to do is, using the same non-hardening sealant, I'm also going to put a bead on the body. What's going to happen is after we install the glass, it will come in contact, and this will create the seal to prevent water intrusion. Now, as we're finishing putting the hardening sealant onto the body, this is the pinch weld groove of the gasket. The gasket will sit on here. This is the area of the gasket that has those fins that will come in contact with this area here. That's why we put the sealant on this part of the pinch weld and not the flange. For installation purposes, we're going to go ahead and apply our foaming glass cleaner to the gasket. Really?
And why are we doing this, Greg?
This is just for installation, so the gasket will come around the pinch weld surface. I'm not worried about it staying on the gasket because it will dissipate and dry up. It won't affect the sealing and properties of the sealant. Now we're just setting in the vehicle. We're not trying to install it. The bottom is just going to sit there. And the pinch weld
Probably go your way a little bit if you want. This fits over here better. Must be the curve of the glass.
Okay, I don't have much of a gap over here.
Okay. I think we're okay.
Now we'll go inside and start installing. Okay, Jeff's on the outside. He's putting pressure against the glass, flat hands. We're going to grab both stems of the rope, pull that over. I'm just going to start this a little bit both ways. Again, I'm pulling the rope right up against the glass so it pulls that pinch weld lip right over the flange of the pinch weld. Again, pulling the rope right along the glass. It brings that over that pinch weld flange. Make sure it's seated all the way around. Now some of this may be already over the flange, which is fine. What we have to do is we have to go around this corner to get this section in first. And then we'll bring it back. And then we'll go for this top corner and then we'll bring it around the corner a couple of inches. Hunter, can you lower that light right about here? Thank you. Get to our corner, we might have to do some circles with the rope. Now as you see, this side is sitting pretty good. Now we'll go check the other side and install that one. All right, we brought the bottom and the sides in. Now we're just finishing on the top. As you can see, that gasket is coming in and lipping over the pinch weld. That's what you want. That's how this thing gets seated into the body of the car. Jeff is tapping on the outside. That seats it down into that pinch weld area. Hold on, don't hit it now. Make sure that this gasket is seated all the way around.
All right, you can see right in here is a good example of where we have the two beads and they actually connected once we dropped it in, and that's what you want to make sure it seals up really nice in the body and the gasket.
Now that we have the windshields installed, we have the sealant between the body and the gasket. Now what we want to do is we want to add a hardening urethane type of sealant in between the gasket and the glass. This tip is cut a little bit of an angle. It's also about a 1/4 inch wide. And put the tip underneath gasket and glass. Just apply this around the perimeter of the windshield. Now that we have the urethane installed into the gasket, what I want to go along and press down on this gasket to ensure that I'm getting a good seal with that urethane. And you can see that this urethane is actually oozing out. When we're done with this process, we'll come back and clean it. But I'm, again, making sure that I have a good seal between the glass and the gasket. We'll complete this process all the way around the glass. Now that we've gone through and pressed out the extra urethane, we're going to go ahead and clean that off. First, we're going to apply our foaming glass cleaner. Then we're going to come right along the edge with the razor blade and trim off the excess. It is easiest to do this when the urethane is still soft. We'll go ahead and do this around the entire perimeter of the glass. For our installation on this particular vehicle, the top molding clips need to be modified. First part, we're going to remove these bent up flanges. We have removed the flanges. Now we are going to file down this top side of this pin. We're going to take a little bit of that head off of the pin. As you can see, now that head of the pin is actually flattened out a little bit. That'll give us enough clearance to slide this in our top molding. We're going to install the molding clips into our upper molding now. When I removed the old clips, I did make marks of their location. We will now take the clip. The orientation of this pin is angled away from that clip. It needs to be over this larger flange on the upper molding. And we'll do this with the rest of the clips on the upper molding. We wanted to show you outside of the car. The stud from this clip will actually protrude into the inside of the vehicle. This is the retaining nut that will come from the inside under the headliner. This will install onto this pin and thread itself on inside the car to install this top molding. These pins again protrude through holes in the roof. What we're going to do is take non-hardening mastic butyl type of material, and we're going to wrap it around this pin right on the clip. Now we'll do this to all of the pins on the molding.
Next step is take some of the same mastic material, make it into a little bit of a ball, and put it into the hole where the actual clip's going to go. A step is critical for these clips to make sure that you don't have any leakage with these holes on your body.
We are going to install the top molding. We're going to push the pins right through the mastic sealant into those holes. Now we'll move to the inside to install the retaining nuts. We're on the inside. Now we have our stud poking into the interior. I'm going to put this retaining nut on here. I am using a deep well socket because of the length of that pin. Going to just thread it on. The retaining nuts will cut their own threads into those pins. I'm just going to snug this up. Jeff is on the outside pushing it down towards the body so it doesn't push out.
All right, Greg is actually tightening down the nut on the stud here. I'm put a little pressure down. As Greg noted, you don't want to over tighten this. You just want to snug it up and make sure that the trim is even with the roof line here, so you don't get it all wavy as you go down. And right there looks good.
Now that we have the retaining nuts into the upper molding on the outside, we're going to turn our attention to the inside on the reinstallation of the interior. What I'm going to start with is putting a little spray adhesive just on this leading edge of the headliner. And then I'm spraying the body, but I'm also going to spray the headliner. This is a contact type cement that we'll use to put that in place. We've applied the adhesive on the headliner and then also on the body. We'll let this tack up a little bit and then we'll just put the two together. Now that the adhesive is on the headliner and also on the body, we let it tack up. So I'm just going to start in the middle by the rear view mirror. I'm just going to give just real light pressure. What we want to do is keep this headliner nice and flat. Bring this material forward. You don't want to create any wrinkles. We'll put the two together. So as we're putting these interior pieces back together, we're working along the blower area. I've been using this pick to find the holes for the screws. Putting the screws in, just starting them. I'm not tightening everything until everything is in place. Then we'll go back and snug everything up. We're finished installing the lower and the upper interior trim around the windshield. We're going to work on our A-pillar trim. We've installed this piece first, and then we brought it along and installed this piece. I'm going to use my pick to find my screw holes. Again, we've placed them on the cardboard. So we'll just go ahead and install these screws and fasten these moldings into place.
All right, I went ahead and put on the inner trim here of the two screws that we marked here and there. So that's down. Now we have this outer piece that you slide over the roof rail, and this one is missing some screws, so we don't have all the screws, but I started one here, and then I can push this in. There's a little bit of tension, but I make sure the holes line up. Like I said, this car is missing several screws. That's snapped over that. So what I'm going to do is kind of get this started. I want a little bit of play here yet as we put the lower trim on. And I'll put the other screw right here. Like I said, I'm leaving a little bit of play so we can move this around and get the other trim on. I'm going to go ahead and do the lower trim.
All right, we have our lower molding upside down, and we are loading the new clips into that molding. There are two different styles. These are the main ones that go and hold the cowl into place. They'll have this extra tab. And these are just to fasten the end of the molding in the door jamb. The orientation of these clips is that screw hole is facing out and away for when we flip it over, it'll attach into the car. And we'll move that over to our marks. These end ones that just hold the end of the molding into the car, We'll bring into place. And those also will, screw holes will point away from the molding. All right, now we're going to turn the molding over. We're going to retain these last two clips towards the end of the molding so they stay on the back side of that fender.
Next step, we're going to slide the lower trim into the A-pillar trim here. Kind of line up the dirt line here. And then we can go back and start tightening down clips. All right, we're going to go ahead and put the two screws closest to the A-pillar first. Kind of see these clips move around when we put it in, so we're going to just kind of slide them back to line them up like this. Now we're going to have to push down a little bit on this molding to get them to line up. Go like that, the hole's going to line up. Then we'll continue along the bottom here.
We've got the ends already screwed down, so now we're going to start in the middle. We've kind of lined the clips up with the holes in the body. Now we'll go ahead and fasten them down. We'll start all the screws and come back and tighten them up.
All right, we have all the screws in. We're just going to go back and snug them all up.
I do want to point out on these lower exterior molding clips, it does have this tab. The cowl will insert in above this tab and underneath this chrome trim. So Jeff and I will bring that in. Above that tab, but under the chrome trim. And we'll just bring this cowl back underneath. And our screw holes will line up for fastening it down.
I got the washer nozzle back in, so we just have to put a screw into the bracket there to hold it in place. And now we're going to go ahead and put the screws into the actual cowl. Start back here, the hole lines up good. All right, one of the last steps here is to put wiper assembly back together. Put that on and the lock ring. Want to snug this down, we'll use these pliers again. You don't have to over tighten this. Then you can go ahead and put your wiper arm on. Don't make sure it's lined up here. And repeat the process on the other side. Thanks for watching the video. It's a long one. It's quite an entailed process, but it's important to take your time, be patient, and make sure you don't lose any of the screws or the hardware that you're going to need, and you'll be able to get this done yourself. Thanks for watching.